Do solemnly swear
that you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
Game of Thrones Season 6, Episode 7 is out. Let's have a look. We meet Brother Ray, a priest who leads a village somewhere in the Riverlands. It seems a pretty nice place they've got going. They're working together to build a sept, a seven-sided structure that serves as a church of the faith of the Seven. Brother Ray is similar to a book character called the Elder Brother. He leads a group of monks who live on the Quiet Isle, seeking atonement for their sins by taking vows of silence. Brienne visits this island in the books, and there she sees a certain monk digging graves. He's unusually tall, and he limps as though his leg was hurt, and he's subtly associated with dogs, so fans have speculated for years that this gravedigger is the Hound. Remember at the end of Season 4, Sandor is beaten by Brienne and left for dead by Arya, but we never actually see him die. So the theory in the books is that he's rescued by the Elder Brother and now lives on the Quiet Isle. And that's basically what happens in the show. Sandor's saved by Ray and now lives among his people. In the books it seems as though Sandor finds peace in his new life, that he lets go of his hatred and violence. He actually becomes one of the monks, atoning for his sins. Though in the show, Sandor says hate keeps him going. He chops wood like he's trying to murder it. He seems pretty much unchanged from the violent dude he was before. So maybe we'll see more change in his character later. Ray says the gods have plans for Sandor Clegane. In King's Landing, we see a very different sort of priest. The High Sparrow visits Marjorie, who's still acting all faithful and pious. She's also got a funny little crownlet, because Tyrells do love their headwear. But they quote some scripture at each other, and the Sparrow makes a comment that you don't have to know all the texts to be a good, pious person, which reflects on Ray, right? He plays it pretty fast and loose with his theology, says he doesn't know much about the gods, but nonetheless he uses religious ideas to help him build a happy community. Game of Thrones shows that there are lots of different ways to be religious, some good, some bad, and most a bit of both. But anyway, the Sparrow sits Marge down, gives her a creepy priestly touch on the thigh, and tells her that she should be having more sex with Tommen. It seems like the Sparrow wants to make sure that Tommen and Marge have a child, which of course is very politically important, right? A son of King Tommen would be the heir to the Iron Throne, so maybe the Sparrow's making sure that his power through Tommen will survive, even if Tommen doesn't. The Sparrow then subtly threatens Olenna, so Marge goes and visits her, with Scepter Unella watching over. Marge talks the talk, acts like she's on the Sparrow's side, but she secretly passes a paper to Olenna with a drawing of a rose. This refers to the sigil of House Tyrell, so what Marge is saying here is that while she pretends to be all pious, she's truly still on the side of Tyrell. So one of her goals at this point may be to free her brother Loras somehow. Up north, Jon Snow tries to recruit the Wildlings for his battle against the Boltons, and the Wildlings are in a really terrible spot right now, stuck between the Northmen who want to kill them and the White Walkers who want to kill them then turn them into zombies. Jon argues that the Wildlings' best hope is to side with the Starks and retake the north. Tormund argues that they owe Jon because he saved them by letting them through the wall. These are both strong arguments, so Jon gets an endorsement from Wunwun and the Wildlings vote Snow. It is weird that just a few episodes ago, Tormund said that the Wildlings think that Jon Snow's a god because he rose from the dead, but for people who think he's a god, they still need a lot of convincing to follow him. No one seems to think it's a big deal anymore that Jon was resurrected. Melisandre got all excited about it, said Jon might be the prince that was promised, but we've barely seen her since. Jon himself seems pretty much unchanged by his resurrection. His personality seems the same. What's the point of killing then resurrecting a character if that character doesn't change from the experience? Hopefully we'll get something more before the season ends. Back in King's Landing, Cersei tries to ally with Olenna, but the Queen of Thorns tears her to shreds, points out that this whole mess with the Sparrows started because Cersei allowed the Faith to arm themselves. Olenna suggests that Cersei might be the worst person she's ever met, and Cersei has done a lot of terrible things. Framing the Tyrells, framing Tyrion, having King Robert killed, killing Lady, beating Ros, killing dwarfs. And that's just in the show. She does even worse in the books, not to mention her terrible political and economic decisions that damage the whole realm, and that she's just generally cruel and horrible to the people around her. So some would call it justice that now Cersei's lost everything. Her power, her prestige, her father, her firstborn, her daughter. In the books, even her brother and lover is slipping away. All Cersei has left now is Tommen, and he's in the hands of a scheming zealot. Really, the only card Cersei's still got up her sleeve is the Mountain, so you can be damn sure that she's going to use him. Jaime and Bronn arrive at Riverrun, which is held by the Blackfish, Brynden Tully. The castle is under siege by the Freys, but they aren't doing a very good job, so Jaime has come to sort their shit out and take the castle in the name of King Tommen. In the books, Jaime has a lot of complicated feelings about this siege. For one thing, back in book in season 3, when Cat releases him from captivity, she makes him swear on his honor and his family and his gods to never again take up arms against Stark nor Tully. But unless Jaime can convince the Blackfish to give up Riverrun peacefully, he'll need to storm the castle and break his oath. This affects how Jaime sees himself. He's known as the Kingslayer, a man with shit for honor, but now he's trying to be a better man, to keep his oaths. Another complication is the Blackfish himself. Brynden was a war hero back in the day, and as a kid, Jaime idolized him, wanted to hear all the stories of his exploits. But now, Jaime is set against the man he once admired. Jaime's been forced into a war against a hero he looked up to, and against a family he swore never to attack. On top of that, he's still reeling from the loss of his hand, and the loss of his father, which he feels responsible for because he freed Tyrion, who killed him, and in the books he has a falling out with Tyrion, and in the books Jaime starts to break up with Cersei. Basically, Jaime's life has fallen apart, and this siege is the stage where he starts to rebuild himself, not as the douchey Prince Charming he was before, but as a better, nobler man. That's what's up in the books, anyway. Jon, Sansa, and Davos arrive at Bear Island, home of House Mormont. The Mormonts are a really cool family. Their leader was Jor until he went off to join the Night's Watch. Jor left his son Jorah to rule until he got caught selling slaves and ran off to Essos, where he ends up serving Daenerys. So Jor's sister Mage took charge, and she's this tough warrior woman type who fought alongside Robb Stark in his war. Mage has a bunch of daughters, warriors themselves, and interestingly, it's not clear who the father of her children is, because a husband is never mentioned. But there is a theory. The wildling Tormund seems to have a bit of a thing for warrior women, right? And he does claim to have fucked a she-bear. Mage's nickname is the She-Bear, so some fans believe that Tormund and Mage may have had a secret romance. Tormund might have taken boats to Bear Island for booty calls. In the show, though, Mage is now dead, as are her elder daughters apparently, because the head of House Mormont is now 10-year-old Lyanna, and she's awesome, this tiny little kid talking all big and stern. At first she's reluctant to support the Starks because, as she points out, Sansa and Jon's allegiance is questionable. Jon's technically a Snow, not a Stark, at least until we get news of his true parentage, and Sansa has been married to a Lannister and a Bolton. In the end, what convinces Lyanna is Davos' argument that they need to unite against the White Walkers, which is a little puzzling. What does Lyanna know of White Walkers? Regardless, she gives Jon and Sansa the support of her soldiers, all 62 of them. But just remember that if Lyanna meets Tormund in the future, she may unknowingly be meeting her father. Back at Riverrun, Jaime goes and chats with the Blackfish, and this goes down a lot like it does in the books. Jaime tries to get him to surrender, Blackfish talks a bunch of smack, so it looks like Jaime's going to have to attack Riverrun and break his oath to Catelyn. However, things might change when Brienne arrives. Maybe some peaceful resolution might be possible. The Starks go to speak to Lord Glover at Deepwood Motte, and he flat out refuses to support them. He doesn't want to fight alongside wildlings, he doesn't want to anger the Boltons, and he feels he was failed by the Starks under Robb. Remember, Robb's marriage to Talisa screwed up the alliance with the Freys, which led to the Red Wedding, which led to the defeat of the North, so Robb Stark thinking with his dick kinda screwed over the Glovers. Glover talks about the suffering of his family during the war, and we're reminded that all these struggles between Starks and Lannisters and Tullys and Boltons don't just affect the lords and ladies at the top, they affect the people who serve them, and those people do have a right to be mad when they're failed by their overlords. Yara and Theon take a pit stop in Volantis. While Yara and her Ironborn party it up, Theon suffers. This episode is called The Broken Man, but it could be called The Broken Men, because look how many there are. Theon, Edmure, Sandor, and Gregor, arguably Jaime, Jon, and Davos. One of the great things about Game of Thrones is that it shows that war has consequences, that people get hurt in ways that don't always get better. Anyway, Yara tells Theon to man up or die, which is the Ironborn approach to therapy, and Yara outlines her plan, to sail to Meereen and ally with Daenerys so that she can take back the Iron Islands. The question, of course, is whether Euron can get there first. Back in the north, Davos and the Starks discuss their situation. They've got 2,000 wildlings, 200 Hornwoods, 143 Masons, 42 Mormonts, and 1 Woonwoon, which isn't enough to beat some 5,000 Boltons plus however many Umbers and Carstocks they've got. So Sansa writes a letter to Littlefinger asking him to bring his Knights of the Vale, which will probably make all the difference. It's also possible that the Blackfish and the Tullys might arrive to help, and there are also the Manderleys, one of the largest northern houses that, as far as we know, still haven't taken a side. However it turns out, this Battle of the Bastards is going to be huge. Back at the Riverlands, 3 men come and threaten Ray's village, demanding horses and food. They seem to be from the Brotherhood Without Banners, that outlaw group Arya meets in Season 3. The Brotherhood is founded to protect the common folk, and they do some dodgy stuff, like stealing supplies from people on a promise to eventually pay them back. But these 3 guys are acting like straight-up bandits, and soon we see them do much worse. In Bravos, Arya books a ship to take her back to Westeros, then she goes for a walk and gets attacked by the waif. She escapes, but with a gut full of stab wounds. If this was any other character, you'd think she's gonna die, right? But this is Arya. She's been off on her own storyline for ages, training for like 2 seasons. There's no way they're gonna suddenly kill her off now and make her whole arc lead to nothing. So how's she gonna survive? It looks like she needs help, and right now, Lady Crane is the closest thing Arya's got to a friend in this city, so maybe Crane will find her, somehow heal her, and send her on her way to Westeros. It might be that simple, but there are a lot of crazy theories about more complicated ways this could go down. Like, some people think that the waif is actually a kind of a split personality of Arya, like a Fight Club Tyler Durden type deal, or maybe that Arya used some acting tricks to fake her wounds with pig's blood or something. They're both cool ideas, but probably the most likely crazy theory is the idea that the person who was stabbed isn't Arya. Because remember, we're dealing with faceless assassins here, people who can magically take on the appearance of other people, so maybe the person who was stabbed isn't Arya, but Jaqen. Because we have seen Jaqen wear Arya's face before, and we've seen Jaqen die for Arya before. He drinks poison so that Arya doesn't have to in Season 5. The reason Jaqen's still around is that he's not really a person, he's no one, he's just a face that can be worn by any faceless man. It is confusing, but the point is that we know that Jaqen can look like Arya, and that Jaqen's willing to die for Arya. So maybe he's doing it again, dying in Arya's place so that the real Arya can escape. This would explain a lot because the Arya of this episode acts really different to the Arya of last episode. Last episode, she hides out with her sword drawn. It looks like she knows she's being hunted by assassins and she's taking it seriously. But this episode, Arya wanders about in the open, not paying attention to her surroundings. She seems to have found the time for a haircut and a new outfit, and she doesn't even have her sword at her belt. She walks different, she talks different, she uses her right hand when Arya is left-handed. Everything about her is off. So maybe she's not Arya, but Jaqen pretending to be Arya. The really difficult question is, why would Jaqen do this? Why would he die in Arya's place? Maybe what's going on here is that this is all an elaborate test of the waif, because she's been a pretty rubbish faceless man lately. She's meant to be no one, with no desires, no personality, just pure obedience, but she clearly enjoys tormenting Arya. She clearly wants to kill her. Jaqen tells her not to let Arya suffer, and yet the waif stabs Arya in the gut, so she dies slowly and painfully. The waif is failing her training, so maybe Jaqen arranged all this to fuck with her somehow. It's hard to guess at the specifics, but maybe we'll just have to wait and see. Either way, it seems all but certain that Arya will somehow survive this. Back in the Riverlands, the Hound finds that Ray and his people have been slaughtered, presumably by these guys from the Brotherhood. And this is a pretty crazy thing. We've never seen the Brotherhood do anything this bad before, and from the looks of the food on the ground, they don't even do it for supplies. So why? The fact that Ray is hanged might be a hint. Because in the books, the Brotherhood really starts to go downhill when their original leader, Beric, dies and is replaced by a new leader called Lady Stoneheart. We won't spoil who Stoneheart is, because she might still appear in the show eventually, but she is called the Hangwoman for her habit of hanging her enemies. Stoneheart does lead the Brotherhood down a dark, violent path, so she might be the explanation for what happened here. But as far as we've seen, even she will only kill the guilty. We've never seen her massacre whole villages, so basically, we don't know why the Brotherhood would do this. What we do know is that Sandor's coming for them. He takes his axe and goes after the Brotherhood, which probably won't end well for them. It's going to be awesome to see how Sandor's involved in the story ahead. He might meet Brienne again, because they're both in the Riverlands. He might reunite with Arya when she returns to Westeros. He might see Sansa again, and maybe Sandor will meet his brother. Sandor and Gregor Clegane have the angriest, bloodiest sibling rivalry in all of Game of Thrones. Gregor was the one who burned Sandor's face back in the day. And they've both come a long way since. Sandor almost dies and rises as a changed man, and Gregor dies and is resurrected as a silent giant zombie. There is a theory that if Gregor represents Cersei in a trial by combat, the Faith will be represented by Sandor. So the brothers Clegane, two of the biggest, most powerful warriors in Westeros, will fight before all King's Landing in the biggest, most spectacular clash in the series. This theory is called Clegane Bowl. Thank you for watching, and thank you to all patrons for supporting this channel, including Jason A. Diegmuller, Jason Pan, Sandeep Rath, Ken Gray, Adam Aladina, Jessica Stoneweaver, and Turd Ferguson. Cheers.